right understanding of who we are and what we do, training America's 21st century workforce, education at work, however else we want to describe it, it doesn't matter how hard we fight and how many battles we might win or skirmishes we might win. We have to change the dialogue. So what do we need to do? Well, we think it starts with standards. We need a good housekeeping seal of approval for members of our industry, and we need to go beyond that. Our schools are our best advocates. The more people who can get to our schools and see a graduation or see these wonderful recipients today of their scholarships, the better we're going to do. We need to do it through social media. We need to do it through grassroots, and we need to do it through an integrated campaign. What's our long-term goal? Simple. One set of rules for all schools. If they have to treat us the same way as the traditional post-secondary institutions, they'll treat us better. Okay, where are we today legislatively? I understand there was a panel that asked the question, is the HELP committee through with us? I have an answer for that. No. But let me say this. Have we made inroads? Have we made it harder for the HELP committee to hurt us? Yes. The first three things you see on this slide are things that Tom Harkin wants to do. I had lunch with him. When he told me that he got where he got angry with the industry because of the GAO report, and I challenged him, he got mad. And the good news was, when he got mad, he told me what he wanted. He wanted these three things. The GE rule, whatever you believe about gainful employment, there's two problems. One, it relies on data we haven't seen and nobody's seen. There was no programmatic testing. The testing was done in Missouri on an institution-wide basis, not a program-wide basis. So we really don't know who's going to pass and who's going to fail gainful employment. And beyond that, the rule itself allows the department to make changes. And we know what those changes are likely to be, certainly in this administration. There are also fears of appropriations tricks or the super committee. Remember, the super committee has to come up with cuts. And those cuts are going to be a package. The package is going to be voted up or down. So we're not going to have the ability to fight each issue. Now, I think this is a small likelihood, but we must keep our eye on what the super committee is doing. So let's go back in time a little bit and talk about this storm that I mentioned, this series of brush fires. It started for me looking at some of the things that were going on in 2004 and 2005. This slide's a quick example of some of those things that were happening. It got a lot worse in 2009 as the short sellers got into the game. I'm sure you remember many of these articles, but when you see them displayed like this, it kind of takes your breath away. And it didn't get any better in 2010, leading up to August of 2010, probably the worst it could be. And then in August in 2010, the GAO report, that wonderful fictitious document that said that 15 out of 15 schools were engaged in deceptive practices, that really set the stage for what we were facing. What happened to the companies? Now, I realize most of the people in this room are private companies, but when you look at the value that has come out of this sector from the public companies, it has to tell you two things. One, the value of all of your schools has come down because the public companies do set the valuation trends, like it or not. And second, this is a reflection of what the investors believe are the prospects for our industry. Not true, but it is a reflection of what they believe. So here's where we were. We had the perfect storm. We had Democrats in all three branches. We had the HELP committee going after us. We had a terrible GAO report, and we had the media to boot. We formed the coalition to do three things. Challenge the gainful employment regulation. And I think we've been reasonably successful in weakening it, but it's still a terrible law, terrible regulation. We wanted to begin to think about how we establish and build a positive sector image and change the dialogue. And as I said before, that opportunity is now, right now. And then if we can do that, we can create that reasonable legislative framework and regulatory framework in which to operate. So we had to first go to the offensive. When people come up to me all the day, yesterday and today, and they say, oh yeah, you're the coalition, love what you're doing, silently rooting you on. There are others who say you're too aggressive and I wish you'd stop, but people today have been very, very positive. Well, we had to attack on three fronts: bad policy, bad politics, and bad process. And the reason we had to do that was because so many things were so wrong. The dialogue had gotten so twisted. We don't have any graduates. Well, that's not true. We graduate 58% of our two-year students against 20% of the community colleges, but that had never been pointed out. The dialogue, the mantra that we've never been able to get rid of, Harkin's mantra, that's been picked up by the Department of Education. They say that we're 10% of the students, 23% of the Title IV draw, and 48% of the defaults. Well, it's kind of true. We're 10% of students all in, but we're 20% of first-time, full-time students. We're 23% of the draw. That's true. But if you're comparing draw, that's dollars. And of the dollars drawn versus the dollars defaulted, we're the same proportion, roughly. We're 24% of the dollar defaults, not 48%. And if what you're talking about is protecting taxpayers, what they keep yelling about, it's the 24% that matters, not the 48%. But we're in such a deep hole, no one wants to hear that. We can't get that out. So, as I said, we were formed to do these three things. We started aggressively advertising. We did research which showed that it costs the taxpayers $25,000 less per graduated student at our schools than at the community college. It was third-party research. It was well done. We hired, I see Jean Norris in the back, we hired Jean and her husband to go in and look at that GAO report, and darn it, if they didn't find that less than 25% of what they said was wrong, was really wrong, and that was after the GAO retracted 16 of 28 findings. If you don't think our detractors are active, think about the fanfare for that GAO report. I don't think we saw that same fanfare for the retractions, did we? Here's the taxpayer cost research. Jean and Vince also did research on the community colleges and issues that they had. A lot of people thought that that was way too aggressive. I was on the fence, maybe it was, but we needed to get it out there. We needed to say that it's not us. It's that there are issues in higher education that definitely need to be addressed. This, tough to see, it is on the website. The bottom line is we started to debunk the myths. As I said, we never debunked that one myth that I wish we had. And we began asking for a seat at the table. We listed the employers that we work with. We said, we are about jobs. Give us a seat at the table. Do any of you have that seat? Has the President's Council called you and asked you to speak to them? We're working hard to try to make that happen, but it hasn't happened yet. And we fought hard against gainful employment, of course. Sorry, that was pretty quick, but I think you've seen this ad. And we fought hard on the website to get people to write in, students, teachers, graduates, employers, and to have a compendium of everything that's happened, and it still exists. We exposed the short seller activity. Make no mistake about it. This perfect storm, it included people who had interests in the public companies at high values and had bet against those public company stocks, and they wanted those stocks to decrease in value. They worked very hard to dirty the industry in order to do it, and it hit all of us. This diagram, which is on our website, is interactive, and I encourage any of you to go see it because it really shows just how much involvement these people had so that you can be conversant with what happened. And of course, the press has picked up on this, and it has been good for us. We've gotten other traction. The 289 to 136 vote in the House of Representatives to defund gainful employment was unbelievable. 58 Democrats joined the Republicans. This was a lot of work by ABSCU, the coalition, all of you. It was great. However, it didn't get through the Senate. We still have a problem in the Senate. We have to grab the Senate moderates to be able to change this legislation. Other good things, the changes in gainful employments. We do have subcommittees talking to us, and we are starting to engage the moderates. But as I said at the beginning, here's the biggest lesson learned. We need an aggressive offensive strategy to be sure, but we need allies. And those allies are only going to come from grassroots and an amazing strategy to pivot to the positive, to talk about what we do well. It's grassroots, it's social media, it's media. It starts with the adoption of standards and the good housekeeping seal to say that we get it. So this is what we need to do, play defense, but also play offense. It's basically what I just said. And we started with the standards. Now, let's talk about these standards for a minute. There have been other attempts at self-regulation that haven't gotten very far. So we said we needed to go beyond just our industry saying these were the best practices, even though that's a very important thing to say. We went out and we hired a blue ribbon panel. When I say hired, we got them to volunteer. They want to do it. They're passionate about it, but obviously we do pay them for their time. It includes 2 former governors and 3 unmistakably well-respected voices in higher education. It includes a compliance officer who is a former attorney general, was the head of the National Association of Attorney Generals, and it is getting traction. You can see that this is what their goal was to outline our key principles. Those principles are really embodied in these 6 areas, and the standards are on the website for all of you to see. I want to come back and talk to student readiness in just a minute, but you can see that the reactions are really quite good. The press has reacted very favorably. That's not to say 100% favorably. We have had detractors take shots, but there's not a whole lot they can say. And most importantly, we're getting the moderates to come over. Senator Mark Warner from Virginia, never in our corner. Senator Michael Bennett on the HELP Committee, a noted gentleman in education. He is speaking at our education conference, our Education to Jobs conference, a week from Saturday in Colorado at our Ecotech facility. He is finally able to step out because of our self-regulatory efforts. It goes on a lot further than that. Rehberg, who you would somewhat expect, he's on the Republican side, but how about the Congressional Black Caucus? Emmanuel Cleaver, the chairman of the Congressional Black Caucus. Carolyn McCarthy is, of course, a supporter, but again, being heard louder. Another Black Caucus members, Rob Andrews, who's a big supporter, Joe Baca has come over, Bobby Scott has come over, Alcee Hastings, who's a big supporter. But let me talk about the last 3. Dick Durbin, he doesn't like us. He's been a big detractor, but he does recognize this is positive, and he is willing to say something positive. It will help us with the moderates. And we have 2 AGs speaking out as well. We think a lot more to come as we circulate these standards around. So I would ask all of you to look at them, see if they work for you. I really, I can't tell you how much I appreciate David Pyle stepping out and adopting these. These are good for the industry, they're good for your students, and they're good for all of us. So we need broader adoption, but we need to do more. We need a database. We need alumni. We need to work with the administration, keep trying, even though they don't want to give us that seat. We need to keep pushing. I was in Pittsburgh this week meeting with the Jobs Council, talking about an effort to take their report and look at the open jobs and figure out how we as an industry can develop short programs to start filling them. There are 500,000 jobs in healthcare alone that remain unfilled. We need to do more. We need to mobilize our alumni. It's never been done before. It's not going to be cheap. We need to do the research to get them involved. People need to hear our voice. In the end, we need to put money back in these communities. We serve the minority communities. We've formed a nonprofit organization with several members of the minority community called the Diversity Business Exchange. It will come to each of your schools and figure out where there are minority businesses that can provide goods and services to your institution at the same or better prices than you're currently paying. It's putting money back in the community. It's getting the Congressional Black Caucus, the Hispanic Caucus, and women's groups to speak up for us, that we are doing the right things for the communities. Okay, the big nut, the big thing down the road is image building, telling our story, education at work. How are we going to do it? Okay, from a regulatory standpoint, what are we hearing? Well, we're defensive. We're not the problem. Okay, but we really want to say something more. We want to say we're the solution. That is the true pivot to offense. We want to create positive public will. Remember, I said the public will drives the political will, and we need to inoculate against the inevitable bad stories. I don't know if anybody saw the Huffington Post article this morning on EDMC. It's brutal, and there will be more. It's just the nature of our detractors. So we can elevate the reputation, and we can move forward, but it's going to take us working together. Here are 3 things that have come out of key research, 6 months, several focus groups, innumerable surveys. What animates the District of Columbia doesn't necessarily animate the rest of us. So all of the bad rep that we have among our detractors in D.C., not necessarily true.